Well, kids, welcome to another episode of Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. I've got a couple of gentlemen here. Band is called Synical. I've got Brian Haught. Get it right. David Black from the band Synical. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. So I understand you have a single coming out tomorrow.
We do. We have the second single from the record. It's called False Nature. It's coming out on Cleopatra Records. We have the video and the single dropping tomorrow, I think around noon Eastern Standard Time.
So Raquel sent me, I'm going to assume it's most of your album or all your album, a lot of songs on there. Tell my viewers, I guess, some of your influences, because I was sitting there, I'm usually pretty good at kind of picking out, but I was having a little bit of a hard time figuring out who the influences might be. So just go through that a little bit.
Well, it's very kind of you. Of course, I'm influenced heavily by Joy Division, but I'm on the more electronic side. I've been into computers and samplers from basically the beginning. I don't want to reveal too much, but when I started playing, there was no MIDI, and you had to learn how to play it in the studio and get it right with the tape. But I've been into computers from the beginning and kind of kept going with it. So I like all kinds of different stuff. Of course, I'm more in the goth industrial type of stuff, but a little more melodic. I would say that we have Killing Joke as an influence, of course, Depeche Mode, and we've been fortunate to have a lot of people that are friends and contribute with the record. We had David J and Kevin Haskin from Bauhaus play on a track. I have my friend Groovy Man from the Thrill Kill Cult, also a big influence on us from Detroit, sang on one of the tracks, and so we have a lot of influence. New Order, Kraftwerk, but also Sisters of Mercy, and all of your classic goth influences. More like a goth club. Living in LA, that was my favorite thing. Every Thursday, going to Bar Sinister, and they do play a lot of similar material, but there's new stuff too. So instead of trying to be a new version of an old band, we just got some of those guys to play on our record, sort of a little of the new and a little of the old, but not a replication, sort of a going further. Because it's nice to hear some new material. I love to hear all my classic stuff, but we've worked really, really hard on this record and been fortunate to work with a lot of amazing, talented people to get us where we're at right now.
Well, one of the themes that comes up an awful lot, especially when I interview the people from the US, is the whole networking component. So I wouldn't call them full out collabs, but a lot of people know a lot of people, and it just seems like there's this. It's almost like a communal sort of thing where, hey, will you give me a hand and play on this? You guys have a bit of that. Is that kind of the spirit in your scene, if you will, in Los Angeles? Is that what kind of happens?
Well, it's a great question. LA is a huge city, but after you've lived there I've been there for 23 and a half years, pretty long time.
Right.
Um, it is a big city, but you run into a lot of the same kind of people and the same kind of places that you think like-minded. And it's not so much knowing where to go, is also where not to go, you
Right.
know? And it's just funny that over the years you just wind up, bumping into people. Of course, on our last record, this is our fifth album, but the fourth record, uh, another buddy of mine, Roy Mayorga, who's a drummer for Ministry, he played on half of that record. And of course, my guitar player, Eric Griffin, went on to be in the Murder Dolls and Jenna Torturers. So we have our fingers in a lot of pies, but when it comes down to it, we're still trying to do our own little thing. And music seems to be so splintered, but we're just so fortunate to have longtime friends and people that are related to us, and they're adding their little influences. I think it's a great little recipe. It's kind of like cooking a little bit.
Well, there you go. I'll throw this over to David because, um, you know, I lived in Toronto for 7 years. Toronto's a big city. However, the music community is small. And then when you take your circles, it's even smaller. So you'll run into 3 or 4 people that you might know. You see them all over the place, and there's other people that are there that you never see till you get into their circle. Then you tend to see them all the time. Same sort of thing with what you guys do.
Well, I mean, me and Brian are from the same tiny ass city in Georgia. You know what I mean? I grew up with him, where he's kind of my mentor. So yeah, it was kind of the same deal. He introduced me to a lot of people, and I met a lot of people through him, and he showed me a lot of things when I was, coming up in the ranks. And yeah, it was definitely the same deal for sure.
David stayed more in Atlanta while I moved to Los Angeles. He's been to visit and track with us, but he's been on one side of the country, and we're on the, it's 3,000 miles apart.
Sure.
A lot
So
of
with I always like to ask this question too, because obviously everybody was infected by COVID. I mean, this podcast started out of COVID. I mean, I was playing, and then all of a sudden I couldn't play. I figured I'll do this 5 weeks, I'll be back playing. Here I am 3 years later. Um, how much of this particular project started out of that, or was it all fresh kind of when COVID was done?
this project took 8 years
Wow,
start to finish. That's a pretty long time.
it is.
We spent the last record came out in 2012, and we spent a lot of time touring. I did a sort of an ill-fated tour of Italy, and after that, I sort of uh, took stock, and we sort of changed some personnel around and started working on this project. And I think the reason it took so long is we had um, sort of ideas that started, and then we had to wait a little bit. I was doing other projects at the time, but I've always kept to this. And believe it or not, the drummer that played on this is had played for a band from Atlanta called Collective Soul for many years.
Oh
He's
yes,
now
I
their
know.
tour manager. He hurt his wrist, and we had to wait for that. But, the one thing about our records is that we uh, it's electronic. There's a lot of heavy electronics you can see all around us, all the gear, but real drums, real people playing, not just all sequenced. And it's a band. We're a 5-piece band. So 2 guitars, bass, drums, and I play keys on occasion. So it was 8 years is a long time. That's a whole generation, seems like. But the great thing is when you take your time, you can really sculpt and shape songs, get all that character, all the stuff, so that it's not just a generic record that sounds like everything else. We wanted to have a little island of something special, and also working with uh, so many people. I had to wait for our the legend John Fryer to mix and do some additional production on this, and so we just had to wait until the time was right, getting in the right studios. We tracked some of this record where Michael Jackson tracked Thriller and Peter Gabriel did his third album. And so it was a real project. And it's been one of the great things to come to finish. And Cleopatra, so kind to come in at the last second and really help us out in putting this out. And we're just pleased as punch, really.
Well, you know what, gents? We're going to take a little break here. We're going to pay some bills because even on a podcast, you have to do that. So we're going to be back with Brian, with David, and with Synical after this.
Thanks a lot.
Welcome back to Rimshots with Sean. We're here with Brian. Give us away, Brian. We're here with David, the band Synical. And as you were talking in the last segment about your music and putting it all together and being in all the different studios, eventually you're going to have to take it live. And one of the topics that it seems to be out there a lot in circles is the tracks, or using tracks. I know. I mean, I came up in the late '80s and '90s and stuff, and tracks it's been around forever. I mean, they were doing it in the '70s. To me, it's not a big thing. I'm assuming you guys have to use some tracks with what you do. Kind of want to get your thoughts on that, and what you think about how tracks make music and how that works for you guys.
Well, that's a great question. Also, thank you for asking. We start writing things. It may be acoustic or whatever, but I've been using Logic actually since the 80s when it was on the Atari computer called Notator, and I've kept going the whole way. So we have a base in that, and of course our show, the lights, the video, it all is combined, and we do have tracks because although I'm a great keyboard player, and I'm very humble when I say that. If Mick Jagger was up there playing guitar the entire set, how is he going to be able to sing the greatest lyrics if he's thinking about other things? And so I play a little bit on stage. And so when I'm singing, some of those parts are on tape. There's some percussion elements that are on tape, but we have a drummer, we have two guitar players, bass player. So even if the track stopped, we can still go. But it's not so much a crutch as an accoutrement. But there are a lot of bands, and I don't knock anybody for doing that if that's what you want to do. But we're not like a track act. And I want to point out something. There's a lot of artists in the goth field that are just a couple of dudes standing in front of a green screen, and we're a 5-piece band, and we can play that. But yes, we do use tracks, and I just want to so that it adds the little extra icing on the top. But the meat and potatoes is all of what we do live. And hey, we might have a bad night. You're not going to hear perfection. It's not a perfection show. It's going to be better than the CD. We want to add a little bit more. Otherwise, you could just sit home with your awesome stereo system and hear it there. You want a little something extra live.
I love how you describe that, though, because a lot of people don't understand when you're using tracks. I mean, a show is lights, it's sound, it's you go to a bunch of different cities, and every audience is hearing what they think is new, but the performer, it's pretty much the same thing every time, give or take a few little things, right? A few little inflections. So having that element, especially for a big production, is very important. I mean, the way things are now, it's all synchronized, it's all set up, right? It's not like in the days where some guys pushing faders and buttons to do the light show.
Well, there's still an element of that. I mean, the light show we have is all in time and synchronized, but we still use the local light people to add their little influence. We're a collaboration of humans doing things, but we do use machines, and it's a great perspective and a question because some of the big acts you're paying $150 a ticket, and if it's all on tape, I would ask, like, what are we seeing? But I think the reason that more people are using tracks now than ever, is because the production value at even the smallest shows is through the roof. You got people bringing all kinds of stuff, even in a little bar and grill. The days of bringing like a little Fender Twin and turning it up and jamming, I love that, but that's not what people are paying to see these days. So it's very complex, even for support acts. They come out doing all kinds of stuff.
For sure. And I mean, last point, I'm a drummer, and I play to a click track live when I play. And for me, I like it because of the consistency. I've always been a stickler for if something's too fast. So if you're playing a song and it's too fast, it's sometimes it loses the essence of the song. The groove might be gone. Certain little parts just don't resonate. So I guess the last point for me is I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I mean, if you're replacing an entire vocal for an entire night, that's one thing. But to enhance the performance, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Well, being a drummer is a tough gig, and it's a great skill to be able to do that. And I think, the thing about drummers in LA is, I've always said this too, if you're a drummer in LA, you're playing with Ozzy, you're playing with Deftones, you're playing with 10 bands because that's a commodity. You can't really do a good live show without a drummer. It just doesn't really work. So, you better be able to play that click track. But that doesn't mean you're a robot. That just means that you're using it as a guide. It's still your groove that you're playing. You're
Absolutely.
just keeping the meter. It's really just for everyone else's benefit. And I don't see anything wrong with that, really.
Brian, you've made me sound like the smartest man out there, because this is exactly what I've been saying for a very long time. So thank you for that, sir.
Yes, sir.
So David, bass player, and I mean, I anybody that knows me, I like to joke around with bass players, but the bass and the drums are a very integral part of what takes place live. As far as influences, who are some of the people that are you a straight out bass player? Did you start on bass? Did you start on guitar and move over? What was your evolution?
My first instrument was trumpet, but yeah, I started on bass. I did play guitar a lot on the album too, but my like one of my biggest influences was Simon Gallup from The Cure. I mean, his bass lines are just fucking obviously. Oh man.
Oh no, we're all good.
Okay.
Yeah. NC-17.
Yeah. But yeah, I like a lot of the, post-punk bands, a lot of that stuff,
Peter Hook too.
Yes, Peter Hook, for
it's
sure.
Funny. It's funny you're bringing that stuff up because I mean I grew up a rock guy, right? I'm like, I was Motley Crue and Dokken
I was
and
Nikki
Rat,
Sixx all the way too. I'm not
right?
gonna lie.
I would have been the guy when years ago, Duran. And then I go back and I listen to some of that stuff, and it's incredible. And I think about they recorded when there was no Pro Tools. They recorded in an era where, if your song is 4 minutes and at 350 you blow it, you got to go right back to the beginning and start all over again. So there's something to be said for some of that old, well, it's not old, but older material that has, I guess, kind of influenced things that are going on now.
It's pretty old now. It was great.
John Taylor is incredible, and I'm a huge Duran Duran. I've seen him actually 7 times, so I'm a fan.
Wow.
I'd say you're a fan.
Yeah,
7 times.
But and talk about very innovative. I mean, sometimes when a band gets incredibly successful, it's easy to shine them off and just say, "Oh, there's some kind of corporate rock thing." But I don't know. I mean, there's not many bands that have done what Duran Duran have done, and they're still doing huge shows.
It's true.
Well, it's funny because I mean, I grew up a big Iron Maiden fan.
Yeah.
And Run to the Hills is one of those 16th notes up tempo. If you listen to a lot of the stuff, that's exactly what Roger Taylor was doing back then in these pop songs, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great analogy, but I'm not sure that our bass playing is quite that level. I mean, there's if you're that kind of person, I think we're more of like a Cure thing where everyone is balancing each other out, but it's not like a Geddy Lee type of a situation.
Oh no.
Listen, gentlemen.
Hey, if you are Geddy Lee, by all means, go right ahead and play that.
I'm not Geddy Lee.
I'll take Root Note and Groove over 10 pounds of bologna in a 2-pound bag all day long. Like I love Groove. you know what I'm talking about, right? Look, we got to take another break. Hit the subscribe button on here, folks. We got to take one more break, pay some bills. David, Brian, Synical. We're going to talk about the rest of the album after this. All right, we're back for we're going to say our Zoom messed up, but we're here. We're here with Brian. We're here with David. The band is Synical. They have a single that's coming out tomorrow, which will be July 12th, I do believe, if we're looking at the calendar. I could be wrong on that. It might be 11th, but July 12th.
It's the 11th, but that's okay.
Okay, right on. Hey, we're an hour ahead in Canada, so I'm, it's the daylight savings time thing.
Back in the past.
So tell me about Cleopatra Records. You mentioned in the first segment that they kind of came on board for you guys. Everybody knows, I guess, in this day and age that record deals are not the same as they used to be. Things are different now. But what's your relationship like with those people?
Well, also, it's a great question. I'll make it real quick. I've had such a great time in my career with music and very proud of things. But if I had one critique of myself, I've had terrible management from the very beginning, and it stopped me from doing a lot of things. I was offered a record deal from them in 1998, and my my business manager told me not to take that deal. And I had done a bunch of remixes for Cleopatra. I remixed Todd Rundgren. I did a Motley Crue remix with it had Dee Schneider and Scott Ian and all kinds of amazing things. And Cleopatra, let's just be real, they're still the premier goth label of all the labels. Their first band was Christian Death, and they have their foot in that door. And I have regretted my whole life not doing it, but I've been friends with everybody at that label. They're really everything that they've signed has some relevant musical special something. They've really got an ear for music, and I'm just pleased to be on this roster of some amazing bands, and we're in great company. And I just if this is the only record I get to put out with them, I'll still be happy. But I hope to do more because they are just a fantastic label, distributed by Sony. We're coming out in 43 countries, and they really do a lot of hands-on stuff. So many other labels, you're just one little dude, and there's all these big bands, but they really take time. And of course, I've known Matt, who's head of the label, and Brian Pereira for 30 years. So it's been a long time. Not quite 30, it's about 25. But in any event, they really have a handle on this kind of music, and I just couldn't think of a better label to be on. And you're right, you don't have to have a label to do stuff, but they really do things that we don't think we could do ourselves.
You mentioned Brian, and it's one of those things where you hear about it, and everybody's got their story, but you said poor management, and obviously, we're not going to beat up on anybody, but that's kind of in the business seems to happen a lot more often than not, and I think there's different reasons for it, but maybe talk about that a little bit. Do you feel that might have set you back a little bit, or did you just kind of power through it and kind of figure your way out?
Well, I'm not blaming anybody else. Everyone makes their own decisions, but this is our 5th album, and yet no one knows who we are because these other records haven't really come out. The record we had before was on a French label, Deadlight, and they were just in Bordeaux, France, so they never really released anything over here. We just did stuff in Europe. But Cleopatra is really a powerhouse for goth and industrial and rock music too. They have a lot of bands. Faster Pussycat. They've got Tom Kiefer, and they've got a lot of older acts, but they're still doing new records. And they still believe in this. It's not like they're trying to schlep stuff from 30 years ago. They're focused on their continuing stuff. Now, are they going to be as big as they were back then? Maybe not, but that's not the point. If it was really cool once, it will be cool again. So, but if it was never cool.
No, but you know what? I love that, and I'll tell you why. Because what you hear a lot of is oh, the business is dead. The whole thing's not working. It's very, very hard to make any money. And all those things are true. I mean, streaming's really kind of messed things up. Well, I won't say messed things up, but made things different. So you hear more now about bands making their money off touring and doing merch and things like that. And the recording part and your tunes being played is a little bit more difficult. However, like you said, if it was cool once, it could be cool again. And you're starting to see some bands releasing music, and it seems like vinyl coming back and different sorts of things like that, which tells me, the industry maybe has kind of turned a corner in the dumb stuff and it's getting back to cool.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because Cleopatra, we have the heaviest vinyl that you can press. It's our record is all white and is a beautiful piece of art. And also the CDs, they still do physical as well as the digital, and it's just the whole package. They're just a first-class label, and to have these things is really, when I put it on my stereo system downstairs, it really is a great thing. And also, one thing you forget about with vinyl, you have to have 2 sides of a record. On your second side, like on that Twisted Sister record, the first song on side 2 is "I Want to Rock." You got to have a good song on the second side. You got to pace that record out. So it's a great experience from the days when you listen to an entire album. And I really hope people do that with this record. We spent so much time putting the songs right where they're supposed to be, so it flows. And there's even an instrumental on the record. How about that? Who does instrumentals anymore?
I got to tell you, you and I, we're brothers from another mother, because one of the things I've been saying for a long time, and I like Bon Jovi growing up. Slippery When Wet to me was the first side was that there was all the hits. The second side to me was the stuff that I really liked. Had I not had the vinyl record, I never would have found out about that because I would have been streaming it. I wouldn't have found, Raise Your Hands and Without Love and all the stuff that I like. And there's other things that I like Sabbath and different sorts of things that you would never pick up on. So obviously that this is important to you that they're going to be able to get this vinyl piece out there to kind of listen to the whole thing.
Well, I've already got mine, and it's incredible. And they didn't cut corners; they didn't skimp. When you hold the thing, it's heavy and it's really nice. The packaging, it's just, I don't know, it's is the exceeded what I ever thought it was going to be. And there's not a lot of labels that want that stuff. They think it's baggage. They're going to have all this stuff laying around. But, I think when the label really believes in what you're doing, that really inspires us. And we're so lucky to be able to have that kind of support in this day and age when few people do, really.
Well, you
Even
might
with
love
big
this.
labels.
You may or may
Even
not
with
love
big
this. So the singer of my band gave me a couple of vinyl the other night, and I put one of them on, and it was hilarious because I listened to it start to finish. That's Angel, White Hot.
Nice.
Right?
That's the Greg Giuffria is in that band, right?
Absolutely, right? And again, side 2, I forgot how cool side 2 was, and I wouldn't have got it if it wasn't vinyl, right? So there you go. Look, gentlemen, this has been a lot of fun. We have to wrap up, but what I want you to do, I want you to tell my viewers where they're going to find out about Synical, where they're going to get your music, how they're going to hook up with you guys.
Well, listen, we want everyone to go to the Cleopatra Records YouTube channel, and you can see our 2 videos and everything. But of course, if you go to Cleopatra Records, you can order your awesome piece of art, our vinyl record or CD. And there's also some bonus stuff that comes with that. Of course, we're on Spotify and all the streaming platforms. Our record comes out July 21st. Very soon. It'll be everywhere. We would love you guys to take a second and listen to something new. You know what I mean? I think you might like it. You'll laugh. You'll cry. Who knows what you're going to do? You're going to kiss 45 minutes goodbye, but it's a really, really special thing. And I think it has a little something for everybody without being too generic. I think it's if you're a fan of music, you're really gonna like it.
I listened to it today, and I really liked it. I think it's very cool. So, gentlemen, very nice to meet you. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
That's Brian. That's David. They are Synical. And get ready, kids. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Peace out.